Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real crime with you. Friends, today's story is about where on one side is a mother and on the other side is the world. What her heart believed, no one in the world was ready to accept. But the mother's heart said that her child was perfectly fine and would surely return to her, while the entire world believed otherwise. There is a city in America called Philadelphia in 1997. There lived a 26-year-old woman named Luz Cuevas, who was married to Pedro Vera. They spent the first 10 years of their marriage very happily. Pedro was a mechanic, and they had bought their own house. They also had 2 sons. But Luz wanted to have a daughter as well, and God listened to her wish. On December 5th, 1997, they were blessed with a daughter. They named their daughter Delimar Vera. Luz was very happy because her daughter was very beautiful, just the kind of daughter she wanted. Dimples grew on the cheeks of Luz's 2 sons, and Luz felt that her daughter's cheeks would have similar dimples. Her husband was happy seeing her happy because he wanted his wife and children to always be happy. 10 days passed like this, and both mother and daughter were very healthy. Then one day, Pedro Vera held a party at his house. He invited all his relatives and friends to celebrate the arrival of their daughter. Relatives and friends came, enjoyed a lot, and when the party ended, everyone went back to their homes, but some relatives left. Luz put her 2 sons to bed in their room and took her daughter to the room where she slept and put her to sleep. She then went downstairs to help her husband and other relatives for clean up the mess from the party and the leftover food. While they were working, they suddenly heard a loud noise from the upstairs room. As soon as they heard the noise, they ran to the room where their daughter was, and when they saw the room was completely on fire, Luz tried to run into the room, but her husband and the relatives who had stayed over pulled her back. She cried and screamed to save her daughter. They quickly called the fire brigade, who arrived soon and extinguished the fire. Nothing was left in the room. Everything was burnt to ashes. The police also arrived, but they found nothing except some bones. A month later, the police closed the case, stating that the fire was caused by a short circuit, which led to the death of their daughter. Luz's condition had deteriorated significantly. She just wanted to have her daughter with her. Many days passed, but Luz couldn't forget her daughter at all. Her husband and relatives tried hard to make her understand, but she always said, "My daughter is not dead. She is alive. God will surely give me my daughter back." She would often go to the police station and tell the officers to search for her daughter again, insisting something was wrong and that her daughter was alive. However, the police would respond that they couldn't do anything more because the evidence was clear. The remains had been found in the room, and her daughter was only 10 days old. She couldn't have walked out on her own, nor could anyone have taken her out without being seen. Whenever someone told Luz that her daughter had died, she would start yelling at them. Pedro Vera became very distressed seeing his wife's condition. He started to believe that Luz's mental health had deteriorated. Whenever Luz talked about their daughter with her husband, it would lead to arguments. Over time, their relationship became so strained that Pedro eventually divorced Luz. And just like that, 6 years passed. By January 24th, 2004, Luz still couldn't forget her daughter. She always thought of her daughter, and because of this, her relatives had also accepted that she would never be able to forget her daughter. Luz and Pedro had a common friend whose house had a birthday party, and they were both invited to the party. Luz couldn't deny this invitation because the friend was a relative of her in-laws, and they loved her very much. Luz was sitting quietly at the party because ever since her daughter had been away from her, she had become quiet and withdrawn. She didn't mingle much and always stayed alone. While the party was going on, Luz was sitting in one place when her eyes fell on a little girl. She felt that this girl had come to the party with her parents. Luz got up and went to the girl, feeling that she knew her or had some connection with her. When Luz called the girl smiled back at her, and Luz was very surprised because the girl had dimples on both cheeks, just like her son's dimples. This sight reminded her of her 10-year-old daughter, and now all the relatives started looking at Luz, noticing how she was mingling with the child and how happy she seemed while looking at the child. One of the relatives then told her that this girl was Caroline's. When Luz heard this and looked at Caroline, she was stunned because she couldn't believe that this girl could be Caroline's daughter. On the day of the party, Caroline had left her bag in the room, and when the party ended, Caroline went to Luz's room to retrieve her bag. At that time, Luz had come to the room holding her daughter, and only her daughter and Caroline were left in the room. Then the explosion happened. Now Luz started suspecting Caroline because she wondered how Caroline could have had a daughter without her knowing all these years. The relatives who told her about the child said they knew nothing more. Luz had watched many crime-related films and came up with a plan. She saw some children chewing gum and took some gum from them, sticking it on the girl's hair. She offered to remove the gum, and while doing so, she discreetly plucked 4 or 5 hairs from the girl and hid them in a napkin in her purse. She left the party and went to the police station the next morning, telling them, "I told you my daughter is alive, but you didn't believe me. Please conduct a DNA test, and you will know the truth." The police officers responded that they couldn't conduct a DNA test without proper legal procedures. They were familiar with Luz because she had visited the police station many times searching for her daughter. The officers suggested they could get the girl's birth certificate to verify her identity, to which Luz agreed. And when the police went to Caroline's house and just asked for the certificate, Caroline gave them her birth certificate. On the certificate, it showed that her daughter's birth date was January 6, 1998, but Luz's daughter's birth date was December 5, 1997. Luz began to suspect that this might be her daughter and requested the police to conduct a DNA test, but the police refused. Angrily, she left and realized she couldn't take the matter to court because she didn't have enough money. She wondered who she could ask for help and decided to ask her ex-husband. She went to him to ask for money, but he said that he would give her money, but it would be useless, and told her to forget everything because her daughter was no longer in this world. Luz responded that if he wanted to give money, he should, but he shouldn't say that her daughter isn't in this world. She left angrily and pondered how she could arrange the money. Then she met a friend who told her that the city leader was a good person and would surely help her. Hearing this, Luz went to meet the leader, but he was very busy and she couldn't meet him. She went there for several days, but sometimes he was there and sometimes he wasn't. This went on for days. One day, the leader's PA informed him that a woman had been trying to meet him for several days. Then the leader said, "Yes, let her in. I'll talk to her." Luz went into his office and began explaining, "My daughter isn't dead. I saw her. She's alive. I even brought a DNA sample, but the police didn't listen to me." The leader listened to her for about an hour. After hearing her out, the leader started to believe that there might be some truth to her claim that her daughter could be alive. He thought that if it turned out to be false, they could show her the medical report to avoid hurting her feelings and worsening her mental state. Luz pleaded, "Please, just conduct a DNA test once. If the report comes back negative, I will stop making these claims and accept that my daughter is dead. But I am certain that my daughter is alive and nearby." The leader reassured her, "Don't worry, I will fully support you." The leader then took Luz to the Attorney General's office, where Luz recounted the whole story. The Attorney General said, "No problem, give us the DNA sample you have." Luz handed over the sample, which was sent to the lab for testing. When the DNA report came back, everyone was shocked because it confirmed that the girl was indeed her daughter. The Attorney General immediately ordered the police to go to Caroline's house and bring her in. When the police arrived at her house, they found out that Caroline had already discovered the truth and had fled, because when the DNA tests were to be done, the lab personnel had also taken Caroline's samples and Luz's samples. This is how Caroline found out that this matter had reached the government officers. Luz's daughter was kept in a government NGO until the DNA test report came in. The child would stay there until the report was out, and once the report confirmed the mother's identity, the child would be handed over to her. When it was revealed that Luz was indeed the mother, Luz's husband and relatives, who used to claim that Luz was ill, were very happy that their daughter had returned to them. When Luz brought her daughter home, everyone was very happy to meet them. Meanwhile, the police arrested Caroline and interrogated her, demanding that she tell the truth about why she had kept Luz's daughter away from her for so many years. Now Caroline tells her the whole truth, that she had given birth to 2 children, but both of them died. The doctor then told her that she could never become a mother, and hearing this, she was very sad because she wanted to be a mother. On December 15, 1997, when Luz threw a party at her home for the birth of her daughter, Caroline also went there. When she saw Luz's daughter, she liked her very much because she was very beautiful. But then Caroline remembered that she could never become a mother. She quietly left her purse in a room there, and then returned to the party where everyone was enjoying themselves. Then Caroline went to the room where Luz had put her daughter to sleep because some relatives and friends had already left, but some relatives were still at the house. One of the relatives was Caroline. She quietly went to the room, picked up the baby and sneaked out, putting her in her car before returning inside to say goodbye to everyone. She then went upstairs, started a fire, and left. When she drove back to her house, the fire spread throughout the room, burning everything down. When Caroline brought Delimar home, she raised her as her own daughter. She wanted to care for her as if she were her own, but never allowed any relatives or friends into her home because she didn't want them to see Delimar and tell Luz that her daughter was with Caroline. 6 years passed without anyone knowing that the child Caroline was raising was actually Luz's daughter. Luz realized the truth when she saw Delimar at a party and knew that this was indeed her daughter. This Delimar is now 26 years old, and Delimar has worked in several advertisements and series. So this was today's story. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it valuable.